Nautilus-class submarines were retrofitted in the 1970s to create prototype spacecraft, that these were the first prototype craft used by the Navy for its solar warden fleet in the 70s. So is that possible to retrofit a Nautilus-class submarine with the kind of anti-gravity propulsion systems and the kind of energy systems so that it could actually operate in space?
Absolutely. So, and I know that not only the Nautilus class, which, I came in on diesel first, and then I went to classes beyond the Nautilus class from the nuclears. I went to the latest nuclear class and an older one. And in those older ones, the skipjack class, which I served on a skipjack class, is the two of those skipjack class were turned into the same thing, where they take and they weld up the bottom of the ballast tanks, which is just an open grate, so that that's sealed. And then they put in the ballast tank huge argon emitters and take out a lot of the cabling you don't need to be in space. So then once that's done, they can create with high power energy into that argon. From my understanding is how this works. It creates a U4 toroid or an S2S4 relationship that are counter-spinning that cuts into the quantum matrix and creates a anti-gravitational field through the negation of mass entirely, much like the TR-3 does. They're built that way. A submarine is built so it can do that because it has the outer hull and the inner hull, what we call the people tank in submarines. And so, having been in nuclear submarines, I know, and in the skipjack class, that two of those actually were backfitted. The one I was on, we went into the yards and decommissioned it, and I was aware of the fact that unusual things in the yard were being done. And so, from now, what I know now, looking back on it, I realized that's what they were doing, was getting ready. I was one of the last people to leave the submarine, so I saw things after the captain had left and the chief of the boat, and most of the officers had left and enlisted, and I was pretty much in charge. I had a fairly high rank at that time, so I was in charge. Initially I had a lower rank, so I was often my first submarine being diesel submarine, I was often a phone talker, look out homes and planes and that kind of stuff. On diesel's much harder to qualify because you have to learn every system to run it. If you're a nose coner like I was on a nuclear submarine, you don't learn how to run the reactor. Although being a phone talker, I still remember, also the deck engineering also reports the reactors tend to minus 9 microcuries per cubic milliliter kind of stuff, because you heard a million times, you have to repeat it, so you get it memorized. But in that, having that level of knowledge of understanding the nuclear reactor, basically, and it's just a fission reactor. I, understand the Russians supposedly, I think their 5th generation is fusion, and I don't know. I left the military before the just as the SS-21s were getting talked about coming out. I don't know if they have a fusion reactor or we do, but I do know the Beret, and I think possibly even some of the Delta 4s and maybe possibly the Aquila may have a Class 5 reactor fusion. And I do know that the Beret is much like Hunt for Red October, where they have an alternative drive system that is an impulse like a jet, where it uses the water as a jet, and it's nearly because of that undetectable, because one of the primary things of detecting a submarine is detecting the screws turning. It makes a frequency that you can pick up in the water, because anything rotational will create a solid continuous frequency, and it's almost impossible to completely eliminate that. Well, without a screw turning, now there's nothing to pick up on that. So, I know that back to where we started, the skipjack class and almost all of the Nautilus, 2 skipjacks and almost all of the Nautilus were decommissioned and backfitted to be going into the solar warden fleet and being used as essentially spacecraft.
Right. So to be able to do that, to be able to generate sufficient energy so that a Nautilus or Skipjack class submarine could, well, I guess we're talking about transmedium craft now that can both operate under the water and in the air and in space, that they would need something more powerful than a fission engine. So would you agree that at some point they would have had to swap out the fission engine in those Nautilus class and Skipjack class submarines for some kind of fusion engine? And this happened in the 70s and afterwards.
Uh, I'm debating on that one because I know when I was on I think it was that submarine, the Oahu had a power failure. All the power on Oahu went down. So the USS New York, which was a 688 class, was tied up getting shore power. So they increased the number. They shut down took the shore power demand from shore power, put another series of cables over bigger yet and more, and hooked it to the New York City, which then brought its reactor online at full power. And 80% of that power went to the island of Oahu, and they powered the entire island of Oahu, the New York City, the one submarine. And so in that, they had the power then to kickstart not nuclear, but the electric power grid on Oahu. Part of the problem is they lost all the power, and it's kind of like a car where the battery is kind of dead. You need to kickstart it. It's low. You need to get it going. So they did a backfeed and kickstarted the power systems on Oahu. And at the same time, they were powering the entire island. So a nuclear submarine, 688 and above, of course, Nautilus and Skipjack are earlier than that class. They still have a massive amount of power through a nuclear power plant. So I don't know if you need a fusion. I'm pretty sure fission could still make it.
Okay. All right. Because I imagine you would need a very powerful energy supply to be able to power up whatever anti-gravity propulsion system is put into that converted nuclear submarine, so it can now operate as a transmedium device and fly it into space.
Yeah,
go on.
Sorry to interrupt you on that. I forgot to mention that. So sorry to interrupt, but you do. I know the TR3, so you can find the patent online. It's pretty easy. Uses a free energy device, 0-point energy as I call it, or free energy, that develops, it's about the size of a shoebox. It develops over a terawatt. So that is, I don't think a U.S. submarine with a class typical reactor develops that much power. So you're probably right on that part. And then additionally, when people understand it being transmedium, they're thinking in space, in the air, and in the water. If you start shifting like they did with the Eldridge, the field of rotation of the molecules in the time stream that we're in, you shift them to 45 degrees, you become completely radar and visibly invisible. It's what stealth technology is. If you shift slightly past that, you start to move through time. But even at 45 degrees, you're transmedium to the point you could fly through the Rocky Mountains at any altitude you want. Rocky Mountains go up to 14,000 feet from up in Alaska, they're much higher, but going all the way down in Colorado and that area, so you're talking 14,000 feet. You could fly at 8,000 feet through the Rocky Mountains, physically through the mountain. Transmedium means it can go through solid matter, even because it's in a field, a warp field. It's essentially created its own, like in Star Trek terminology, its own warp bubble, and it's in its own little universe. So it is now not only has a negation of mass in relation to this universe, it's not in this universe for the most part. Thank you.
I know there was a patent for a nuclear fusion device that generated up to 1 terawatt of energy that was developed by Dr. Salvador Payas, and that was granted to the US Navy by the US Patent and Trademarks Office. So that was a patent application. As I recall, it was around 2020 that came out. So I imagined that if that was something that Payas was kind of trying to seed into the public arena to kind of speed technological development up along the lines of nuclear fusion, then that this was secretly developed by the Navy 30, 40 years earlier. Would that be kind of accurate?
Yes, that's it. Fairly accurate. I actually just now pulled up the U.S. patent on a triangular spacecraft. In other words, the TR-3, and that's all I did is I put in there the asked, what would be in a big search engine, U.S. patent for TR-3. That's all I put in there, and I pulled it up. It's easy as heck. Mm-hmm. So you can see the TR-3, and then I even got a video now. From that search, I've got a video on the patent number US 20060145019 Alpha 1. Patent application 6 July 2006, filing date 20 December 2004. So that's a long time ago. They've had this technology a very, very long time. And
right. I've seen that.
Yeah. In the patent, it actually goes into the Laplace, L-E-P-L-A-C-E, I can't pronounce it correctly, but into the equations for the polar equations on the Laplace to be able to generate the power as well as the anti-gravitational fields. They've got all of it in here. So it's really phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I think the Patents Office does have some very interesting applications from people like Salvador Payas. Yes, I remember that. I remember seeing that one as well. Salvador Payas's patents, they came out in 2019 or something, and they were unusual because he was able to get support by the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory, as I recall, to be able to have the patent granted because the examiners kind of gave him a rough time. But the Navy intervened and said, "No, this. We want you to grant this patent to our research scientists, and that is something that will, be kind of like become public domain or publicly available." Okay, I see something there. You want to talk about what you're just showing now, Gene?
Yeah, so you can see here, I put in Salvatore Pais in the search engine. U.S. patents by Salvatore Pais. Since you mentioned him, I just said, okay, let's just research by his name, 2016 worldwide applications. Mm-hmm. So that's now worldwide, Salvatore Cesar Pais. And you can see the two hulls with the energized field in between them. Not entirely like a submarine because it's not in the back area. And then it just goes into discussing it in the background and the four known fundamental forces that control energy, strong nuclear, weak nuclear, electromagnetism, and of course gravity. And then it goes into the disturbing, creating fluctuations in the quantum field to create anti-gravity. So it's, pretty basic stuff. And goes into the field equations and things you need to create the amount of different energies you need to be able to do this. And you can see, just like you're saying, they're talking about the energy fields and the standing Coulomb force and the spinning axial rotating, like I was mentioning earlier, fields in order to do this. And then they're even talking in what order of frequency that they're using. That's not very high frequency, by the way, but relatively speaking from what I'm used to dealing with. But you've got all the field equations, everything in here. And explains
Yes.
how to do it. So, yeah.
Yes, his patents, I think there were 5 of them that he put out, from that period from 2016 to 2019 or 2020, that covered a range of kind of like advanced technologies. I think there was that quantum bubble that would be generated in front of a craft, and the nuclear fusion reactor, and I think a room temperature superconductor as well for storing large amounts of energy. So, I mean, I don't think these were patent applications that just kind of came out of nowhere. I think he was given the green light to release some of the stuff that the Navy had been using secretly for 30, 40 years in its classified programs, probably on some of the more recent nuclear submarine classes.
Yeah, like you're saying, you can see other patents that he's referenced here that are cited, and this is 2 or more here. High energy electromagnetic field generator right there.
Mm-hmm.
And that's 2015.
Yep, there you go. Fascinating. All right, so there's a whole lot of kind of like advances made through nuclear submarines, but this takes me to something that, and we can segue here to Donald Trump and his recent election victory. And one of the things he said in his inauguration speech for 2017 was that he said that he planned to harness the new energies, industries, and technologies of tomorrow. So I believe that he he began to do that and commanded the intelligence services to begin releasing these advanced technologies, but he was stymied in that. So, what do you know about Trump and his effort to release some of these advanced technologies, for the technologies for tomorrow, and him being stymied by the deep state?
Well, with Trump, it's hard because he's a excellent chess player, 3D, 4D, 5D chess player. So Panama's very upset with him because he's saying he's gonna ask for Panama back or take over Panama Canal. Says he's trying to buy Greenland because the ice pack is breaking up over the Arctic, and he's thinking, we could go up over Greenland, but you would probably want to go closer to shore. You still have icebergs. So to do that, that means you're probably going to go inside of the Greenland waters and outside of the international boundary of international waters. So he's saying to the Danish, we want to buy Greenland. And this is the art of the deal. This is how he does it. He throws in a huge marker, or however you want to call it, an offer. Like, we're going to take back the Panama Canal, and then the president of Panama's not 1 meter, not one, this is an autonomous country, that's not going to happen. Well, this is how he does the art of the deal. First, you go high so that then the opponent can bargain you down. If you go to where you want to be, and you get bargained down, you get less than you want. You go way above what you want. I used to do this when I was stationed in the Philippines on that diesel submarine, and I would go into the markets, and being an American, but I spoke Tagalog fluently, the girls that I, knew me in around the market would, talk to me, and, I would barter with other, shopkeepers, and how much you pay for this? They go, I can't get it that cheap. How do you get it that cheap? I go I want it cheap, so I'm not the one trying to buy something for, or to get it for a low price. I don't go high. I go extremely, incredibly, ridiculously low. And then I let the person bargain me up. And so they feel they've gotten me up a lot further, but I'm actually cheaper, less expensive than the locals would buy because I'm an American. They will know I'll be coming back more often and I'll buy more. So it's the art of the deal again. You bargain off, and then the last thing is you walk away from the deal, and they come chasing after you. Okay. And this is what Trump's doing. He's a businessman. He knows how to make a deal and how to bargain. And so the same thing goes with these technologies and the deep state is, you go high, say everything, and then they get upset. And the same thing, if you constantly mislead your adversary about what you're doing and where you're doing it, it's the art of war. He also understands the art of war, where the deep state, from what I can see, I didn't think they were this stupid because they've been brilliant for millions of years. They don't seem to know the art of war anymore, or maybe the ones that were brilliant are all gone, and we've got a bunch of figureheads that aren't very intelligent because they don't seem to understand the art of war at all. And you always make your enemy think where you are, and that's not where you are. You're somewhere else. You make them think you're strong when you're weak when you're strong. You're going to attack in a different area than where you're going to actually attack. It's like in World War II, they actually had a guy with a briefcase, a body of a guy, I think it was a colonel or lieutenant or something like that, that was handcuffed to his arm, that washed up on the shore with the plans for the landing in Europe, but it wasn't at Normandy. It was in another location, and the Germans got that body, and they said, oh, this is where they're going to go. So they actually got classified documents that were incorrect to the German military so that they would go somewhere else. And this is what I think Trump is doing, the same kind of misleading things on the technology. I think we will see these high-end technologies, like the one you mentioned here by Salvatore Pais, the high electromagnetic field generator that can obtain 10 to the 24th to 10 to the 28th watts per meter squared and beyond. That's a lot of power. So going vacuum energy fluctuation, in other words, probably I think it's called Cassini, if I'm remembering, or Casimir effect.
The Casimir effect, yes.
Casimir, thank you.
Right. So Donald Trump, then, you would agree, during his first administration, did start out with the intention of releasing a lot of these advanced technologies that had been used in classified programs, but that he was stymied by the deep state. My thinking is that, well, he's going to do the same this time round, but now he's going to be in a much stronger position because he's got people like Elon Musk working with him. But what do you think about that?
Well, I think even his first term and his second term are all part of the game. People say, I hope he doesn't do what he did in the first time. I think the first time was to make the world and the deep state think this is who Donald Trump is. And then his second term, which the Democrats are melting down saying, Elon Musk is the president, all of this stuff. And he's, the recent budget and all that is Trump's forcing us and Musk is forcing us. It's not January 20th. You mean to tell me he is the president? He's forcing them to do things now, but he's not yet sworn in. So then he has been, like Derek Johnson has said through the Law of War 11.3 manual, he has been the president. That's why when he was in court case, he said, I am not the president of the United States. Correct. I am the president of these United States, a different place. So he has been the president. And so I feel that, showing he's weak in certain areas in his first term, moving behind the scenes in his second term, now going to his third term, because it's not president for the corporation. So it's a different place again. It would be a second term for the corporation, outside the corporation for the constitutional republic. So I feel that all of this is a move. In fact, now looking back on it, from MH370, the superconducting room temperature microchips, what allowed the alliance to steal the election for Biden. So that Biden would be the one in charge of the collapsing corporation of the United States of America. And so in the process would be blamed for Afghanistan, be blamed for what happened in Ukraine, be blamed for everything. And all of this, and the massive deficit, and the collapsing economy, and the de-dollarization, and what all these countries going over to BRICS and all of that. And so, and the continued thing, the only thing is you have to walk a tightrope with this, because now they've given, permission to send attackers into Russia pretty deep in, so they've hit Kazan, where the last meeting for BRICS was. So it's all the symbolic movements you see of things happening, and I think that's exactly what we're seeing with these technologies and everything else, and Elon. And so Elon is a very unusual type of person. So he's the same kind of thing. He does not react in the way you would think a normal person. I was listening this morning to a video of Elon in a restaurant, a very high-end restaurant, in jeans, and they didn't recognize him, and the waiter was probably pretty upset. It's out in California, not another Silicon Valley, CEO's got all his apps he's developing, blah, blah, blah. So he treated Elon really badly, and it wasn't till near the end of the evening, and you're talking where, he's, what wine would you recommend? Elon told the waiter, and the waiter said, well, we have something that is obtainable for you, because he figured he's some lower level guy, not like a super billionaire, And Elon was just, I'll take the something Rothschild, this like $1,500 a bottle or something like that, and the guy's like, oh, this guy's playing to be richer than he really is and trying to impress me, and I'm not impressed, and all of that. And Elon was doing it as a study to finally be treated like a regular, everyday Silicon Valley guy. It was a study in, without being recognized as who he is, and he liked the honesty and to be treated like even if it was not being treated well, he liked to see it. And so he wound up hiring that waiter from what I understand, that actually happened, and he hired this waiter because of his honesty, and to bridge the gap between the way Silicon Valley sees their customers and the way their customers see the big, huge corporations. So this guy would give honest appraisals to what Elon was saying he's going to do with different technologies he's developing. So Elon is not your average person. If an average person was being treated very poorly in a high-end restaurant and being insulted constantly, you'd get upset. But he didn't get upset. He just was finding it humorous, finding it an excellent time of study in how can be human behavior and other things. And a whole table of other Silicon Valley high-end people were like, videoing it with their cameras and all of that, and putting it out online live and all kinds of things at the time. And their jaws were dropping that he was so calm. So like Trump, Musk is a very calm, calculating, and very intelligent person that is able to think in the midst of battle. And so what Trump and Musk are doing together, with the Doge, which the word, it's an acronym, DOGE. The Doge is actually a word, and I recommend people look it up, because is that another play on what we understand the Doge is and what it is. And so, of course, Elon Musk and Vivaswamy are part of that, too. And there's a hilarious something out on X that I saw where, talking about like The Apprentice, but it's the Doge, and then Trump comes, they're interviewing various people in all of these agencies they're going to get rid of, and saying, what do you do? And, seeing if they're worth retaining, and then Trump walks in, you're fired. So it's hilarious what I see happening with not just Trump and Musk, but I think Vivaswamy is being used. Quite a few people, all of us are being, including the deep state, are being played like a Stradivarius violin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an interesting term, that Doge, because as you were talking, I immediately thought of the Venetian Republic, because the Doge was the head of the Venetian Republic, and the Venetian Republic for about 4 centuries, 5 centuries, during the Renaissance, was at the forefront of introducing all of these advanced technologies, for that medieval era. So I think that it's a kind of a sign that Trump and Ramaswamy, as head of this kind of new Doge that's being set up, that their job really is to unleash all of these advanced technologies that have been suppressed for decades.
Absolutely. So, if you look at the Doge, like you said, that was in the former republics of Venice and Genoa, and they were in charge of that. And that also refers to the chief magistrate in those former. So, are we seeing the return of a high-level negotiation that is referring to things that would be seeming to be deep state, but not deep state? It's, to me, again, playing the deep state. You can't take down the deep state unless you were inside the deep state. It's what the deep state did, as Kennedy found out, John F. Kennedy found out, is through infiltration. So, of course, Trump had to go to the Wailing Wall. He had to do all of these things to look like he's inside, because he was inside, because you're not going to get the inside information and be trusted by the insiders unless you're inside. It's like Mata Hari had to do terrible, horrific things to get the information that was needed. And that's the way the war goes. In the war, any war, and in this war, there have been people that have had to do things that are so abhorrent to them. It's amazing to me they could do it. And the problem in doing that is to hold on to your inner morality and your inner truth. And so I have to recognize those heroes. We will never know their name, I'm sure, some of these people that have done things in the domes and done things in the deep space programs, like been in the Dark Fleet and come out and done whistleblowers, and the whistleblowers that are coming out for the things they've had to do and the courage they've had. It's humbling.
Yes, I agree with you. I think we've got a lot of heroes, a lot of people that have come forward and talked about the secret space programs and the Dark Fleet and so forth. Well, that kind of leads me to this next question I have, which is this surge in drones that have been sighted, not just in the US, but around the world. I mean, what are they? Are they orbs and spacecraft from extraterrestrials or cryptoterrestrials, or are these part of a deep state operation to kind of like obfuscate and confuse people so that they don't suddenly get awakened by the Galactic Federation or positive extraterrestrials?
So, in evaluating these kind of things where they completely rebrand something, it used to be UFOs. Then they completely rebrand the name that we had for decades into UAPs. They use that a very brief time comparison, only speaking to what was called before, and now it's called drones. Really? Would you go millions of light years across space and you'd fly drones over military bases and all of this stuff? Come on. It's not as they have said. It is not foreign. In other words, in the United States case, it's not from off-world, that would be foreign. It's not from another country, that would be foreign, which means it's ours. They have said it's not military. Well, when they say it's, are they referring to all of them or some of them? I feel it's some of them, because if you go to an Air Force base, I have one close to me, if I go drive by the road on the back gate, take a left and go out on the dirt road with my 4x4, and I'm driving along that road, they're going to show up. I'm not even on the base, and I'm not even flying the drone. If I were to park out there and fly a drone, my drone will be blown to pieces, and I'll be picked up really quick. That is restricted airspace. You're not going to fly as a civilian drones over U.S. military bases. We know there have been craft that have gone over various nuclear missile facilities all over the world and made the nuclear missiles, the uranium, into gold. They said, you like gold? Here you go. You're not going to blow that up, though. So you're not going to blow yourself up with that. So they transmuted the uranium into gold. And so is this what we're seeing? I doubt it. I feel that this, I know that it's, or at least I have read reports, I haven't verified if this is real, that when the Soviet Union fell and Ukraine was given autonomy, the Soviets took back their missiles. They weren't Ukrainian. They took back their nuclear missiles in Ukraine when it was part of the Soviet Union to Russia. And there are supposedly 80 of them. And it's somehow one of these 80 warheads apparently has wound up in the east coast of the United States. How? Why would it be going through there? I don't know. It makes no sense, but that's what people are saying. If it doesn't make sense, it's probably not true, but you could have some missing either uranium or plutonium. In nuclear warheads, you do have a small amount of plutonium in a canister sometimes. It's like when I was on a nuclear submarine, I said, what if that breaks? Because I was, part of my battle station was upper level missile coordinating with the guy in the bottom level, 1, 2, 3, turn on your key to arm the nuclear missile, so it can launch. And so I'm arming the warhead part. I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm really tired. I have no clue what I'm doing up there. It's like, so in that, I knew there was a plutonium canister in that thing that I'm turning a key on. I'm like, so I asked the nuclear weapons officer, the lethality, from my understanding of plutonium, is pretty massive. I go, what happens if somehow I were to break that canister? And he goes, you have time enough to do one thing. I go, put out the word? No, not worth your time. It's like, what? Because in an emergency like a fire or something in a submarine, because it's contained within a closed airspace, it gets hot fast. Because if the temperature rises, pressure rises, so you always get the word out before you try to fight it yourself. So you get the word out. Because no, just bend over, grab your knees, and kiss your butt goodbye, because that's all you're going to have time to do. I'm like, oh my goodness. So there is nuclear materials. You've refined uranium and some plutonium in nuclear missiles and sometimes other elements of nuclear variety. It hardly takes a very tiny amount to create a bad situation. And there is a document that came out on 4chan. I wasn't prepared for this question, so I don't have that document pulled up. Redacted showed the document that came out that part of what they're going to do is to create a scare of nuclear material. Well, we have this supposed warhead that's missing, or some other nuclear material that was in a crate or something in the East Coast, in a port that went missing somehow. How that doesn't make sense to me, but that's a way to get people terrified, and to have drones that would be out at night, which is when you would need to do that, to find that nuclear sniffing ability to find that nuclear material, because a very tiny amount is very, very devastating. And then they could do like a COVID kind of thing where they come out and say, like during the 19 days, we have to lock down this whole region and all that. So it's the beginning of that. You could also say they could use that as a way to then increase it and go full scale, saying, oh, well, this is a world level situation. It's been tracked and contaminated out. We don't know how far. So a way to get into a new world order, a one world government through the WHO, which has already put it forth laws to say they can come into a country and lock it down, and for public safety and all of these different things. Then additionally, you have Operation Bluebeam, where they fake an alien invasion with drones. I don't think so. Elon Musk put out a X post, was hilarious. I showed it on another interview. It's since left, so I can't show it now. But it was just the like when submarines were taught in various schools when you look out the periscope, you have to be able to see a silhouette and recognize it immediately. Is that a Beret? Is that a Delta 4? Is that a Charlie 2? So you look out through the periscope and you see on the horizon just a profile, and you have to be able to recognize. So they had all these profiles. So it was like an F-16 and a B-52. And it's drone. A really tiny plane with 4 propellers with a wing on top of the fuselage. It goes, Iranian mothership. Well, why is they're calling it drone and mothership? Well, we know from the movie 4th of July, the motherships, you Tavistock Institute, long-range precondition people to have fear from certain things. Well, drones and motherships. So now they're heading that way. That tells me the deep state is using this narrative to test the humanity to see the fear level when they say there's drones all over the world. And it's not happening. People all over the world aren't freaking out. A lot of people are. I watched New View with Dana Harvey, something like that. Some Saturday Night Live guy, I can't remember his Dana. He played the church lady. And talking about this drone situation. And, the average person, that's an average person for me, he had hardly any clue of it. And again was saying, why is it being called drone? And they're not really freaking out like they should be, because at this point, most people have been so preconditioned that now having an alien land on the White House lawn would be going, are these the good ones or the bad ones? They're not going to freak out like in, George Orwell kind of way where everybody gets terrified. They want to... Orson Welles did in the 1930s, the War of the Worlds, and they would interrupt regular radio show and go, special breaking news, we have a crash of a ship or something, and they're attacking, and Mars from, and people were actually saying they saw them. And so they waited too long. They were, 1930s would have been good, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Now you're going into the 21st century, it's no longer freaking people out. So I think if they actually pulled off Bluebeam, of course, with the technologies that are out there, with voice to skull, where you can put voices in people's heads, you can put things they think they see in their head, actually can put visual imagery, hallucinations, auditory and visual hallucinations in a large population in an area. And so they don't even have to be actually really seeing them. They can be put in their mind that they are seeing them, and there's nothing there to see. So they could put out some craft and some back-engineered hybrid beings landing and doing actual devastation, and then do that technology as well. And they can control the emotions through technology, too. I've been researching, and people have sent me patents and things on that, and it's quite phenomenal what is out there. So I think that's what this drone situation is about, is testing how much technology they have to use if they do Operation Bluebeam.
Well, I just wanted to kind of ask about sightings of drones coming out from the ocean, that there have been a number of reports that these drones are emerging out of the water, suggesting that they are these transmedium devices. So I agree with you. I don't think they're Russian or Chinese. So are we talking extraterrestrial? Are we talking about deep state? And also, are these coming from some kind of deep state base under the water? Or are we talking kind of like an underwater civilization?
I feel, again, the best answer usually is all of the above. I know pretty much every U.S. Air Force base and darn close to every naval base and most Army bases have a dumb under them. And again, these craft can literally, they don't even have to go into a hangar or like a landing deck on an aircraft carrier and go down an elevator, a flight elevator. They can just go into the ground through transmedium, again, in other words. So I feel it is the alliance of the Federation, as they call it, of the non-terrestrials, are also using this event to be able to intermix, to bring down the fear, to dial it down with the orbs and other things that are not deep state. But the deep state is trying to spin it up, and again, to see how far they can spin it up, and if they can't spin it up, to use the various technologies they have, and these patents are very old. So mass mind control with silent sound spectrum, what they call SSSSS. So 1956, hypnotic inducer. 1958, apparatus for producing visual stimulation, apparatus for producing visual and auditory nervous system excitation, so you can make people freaked out. Method and apparatus for improving neural performance in human subjects by electrotherapy, super soldier kind of stuff there. Hearing systems. So they have a lot of these technologies that they've had. I mean, we're talking 50s and 60s here and 70s, and that's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the, and you've actually mentioned that there are as many as 500 DUMBs in the United States and 5,000 worldwide. So yeah, that would, and as you said, virtually all the military bases have DUMBs underneath them, and I think that would actually fit. Now, as far as overseas DUMBs are concerned, well, one thing that really got my attention was in this Syria conflict and the collapse of the Assad regime over there, was that Israel took over Mount Hermon on the Golan Heights, and I'm sure you're aware that in the Book of Enoch they talk about the 200 fallen angels landing on Mount Hermon and then eventually corrupting humanity with all this advanced technology. So my view, and I've spoken to some others, and they agree that underneath Mount Hermon is an ancient dome with this kind of like fallen angel or Anunnaki technology. So, yeah, do you know anything about that?
Yes, this is something I have studied and had some exposure to. So, of course, my take on Göbekli Tepe is the reason it was buried is that's exactly what it was. It was Anunnaki fallen angelic. So you look at Anunnaki, you're talking the primary individuals being involved are Enki, Enlil, those types. Good cop, bad cop. Some people think Enlil or Enki one was the good, one was the bad. It flips depending on what story if you're going from the Sumerian or some translation of that. You have different translations of the Sumerian scrolls. So you have the man who wrote, what was his name?
Sitchin?
Yeah, Sitchin. Thank you. And I heard another one that said he had some things mistranslated. And the Sumerian King Scrolls and the Technologies, and talking about who and what Enki and Enlil were. So from my understanding and study of this, they were Anunnaki, which come from the Nemesis star system that passes through our system every 29,720 years. It takes 4 years to pass through. It went from 2016 to 2020. Passed in first, comes up from underneath the ecliptic at an 86-degree angle, passes behind the Earth, then behind the Sun, comes out between us and the Sun, and goes back down below the ecliptic. It's what causes the Earth's wobble on its axis at 1 degree every 72 years, which causes the Mazzaroth, or the precession of the equinox. So in that, Enki and Enlil, because when the Draco took over the Anunnaki, they destroyed the planet nearly of Nibiru, which is their main planet, their home planet. And then they have 2 other planets, Helion and Argoda, and then Nemesis, the brown dwarf that passed through our system. Those outer 3 planets, and Nemesis passed up through the ecliptic and then back down over a 4-year period. There's pictures online with setting suns with Nemesis, Helion, Argoda, and our sun in the sky, first in 2016 in what we call the southern hemisphere, lower parts of Italy as well, but in Australia and New Zealand, and then in 2020 up around Norway, Sweden, Greenland, etc. So in that, when the Draco forced and made the Anunnaki surrender, they were an advanced civilization, but they used nuclear weapons. And so atmosphere on Nibiru is pretty destroyed. Well, to be able to make life still possible, you need large amounts of gold gone into what they call ormus, or orgone energy fields that create, through alchemistry or transmutation, move two of the dimensions of the three physical dimensions of height, width, and depth, so that it becomes what they call monatomic, or white gold. It becomes a powder that at a monatomic level can reseed an entire atmosphere. You need a large amount of gold. Well, their planets don't have them in their system. Earth does. So they came to Earth to get the gold, and they were originally mining it. And of course, the Draco aren't going to do that. They're very arrogant, and they're consider themselves the elite of the elite of the elite, especially their primes. At that time, they had some gold primes. They only have one left. But their primes, the first upper level, if you talk Enlil, and then her daughter, and remembering that reptilians can change sex. Depending on if there's a deficiency, a female, like in Jurassic Park, can change into a male. So, and then Inti were the main people in charge of getting the gold from Earth to Nibiru. And so there's a lot of these flower-shaped patterned huge structures all over South Africa, which were used to mine. If you look at a microwave in your little microwave oven, the microwave generator is a little flower-like pattern generating microwaves. Well, that's very tiny. If you look at those things in South Africa, you're talking a massive microwave. So they would bore a beam into the earth to get to the gold seed, and then the miners would have to go to the gold seed to get it out, bring it up, put it in there, reverse the structure so that it would phase the material like a TR3, transmedium it up and beam it up, in other words, into the ship so they could take it to Nibiru. But in the process, they got tired of mining it. So the upper level of Inki and Enlil had, the lower Draco and then the Anunnaki mining it, and there was essentially a lot of, over the thousands and tens of thousands of years of mining that gold, a lot of discontent. And so they decided to make humans do it for them. And humans rebelled, and it was the Pyramid Wars. And then they created another species through genetic engineering, taking the local humans wouldn't do it, so they took two humans and took out the genetic material of the human and put in Draco, Anunnaki, Cro-Magnon, and Neanderthal to create a big, powerful, strong, obedient worker that, and in the DNA, they also put the desire for gold. Like, just overwhelming. You want gold more than you want sex. You want gold more than you want sleep or food. It was primal. It made it a primal urge. And so they got an obedient, known as mankind species, to mine the gold for them, that are now the upper level of the elites, because they have some of the gods, the Anunnaki and the Draco genetics within who and what they are. But in understanding what the Draco are and who Lucifer is, the one to bring light, well, that's Inki.
Well, I just wanted to kind of like bring back this question of the significance of Mount Hermon being taken over by Israel, because previously Mount Hermon, the landing place of the fallen angels of the Anunnaki, or the Igigi faction of the Anunnaki, they landed there, brought advanced technologies. I suspect that they built an underground facility, or they put their ship or advanced technology under Mount Hermon. And up until recently, Mount Hermon was under the control of the Syrian regime, and I assume the Russians were probably given access. But once the regime collapsed, the Israelis marched in, took over the summit of Mount Hermon, and now they've kind of advanced even further into Syria. So, to me, this just raises the question: does Mount Hermon have it done with all this ancient advanced technology from the Anunnaki era, which has now changed hands in terms of control from the Syrians and the Russians to the Americans and the Israelis?
Yeah, so I was going to get there. Sorry, sometimes my loops are huge. So,
yes, it was a loop.
Background understanding. So, during that time of creating all those mining operations, they had things going from Göbekli Tepe, from South Africa, from the Middle East, and throughout all of Africa. So, underneath the pyramid, for example, that entire Giza Plateau is connected by tunnels, and in Arabia too. And then especially in Egypt, and from Iraq as well. So when Iraq fell, the palace of Saddam Hussein was set on top of Solomon's temple. It's told that it had a Stargate in it. They got the Stargate. That's why the U.S. military was said they were torturing people in Iraq. But the people that were being tortured were not military. They were curators of the museums of antiquity. Because Saddam Hussein escaped to Syria through tunnels with the dial-up device, which we don't have the technology to recreate, to Syria. Where in Syria? Well, where do those tunnels go? Mount Hermon. They go to Mount Hermon, and that's where another Stargate is. And that's why they wanted the dial-up device, because, again, they can't create a power system. To power up, it's a Meru-type Stargate, which is two pillars, like in the Bible, where a fiery furnace in between, and everybody gets incinerated except certain people that have human genetics can go through that. But if you don't, you get incinerated. So... And, the two people went through and brought angels back with them of the non-fallen type can go through there as well. So Mount Hermon is a vast series complex connected all over Africa, the Fertile Crescent, up into Turkey, all of this that go to very large underground facilities like Mount Hermon. So Mount Hermon itself is the highest UN long-term occupied area. It's actually 9,232 feet above sea level. But in that, there's a ski resort on it. It's a portion of the Golan Heights. And now it is in the hands of the U.S. and Israel. Of course, that's kind of the same thing. So it's kind of redundant, but it is a ancient facility. To give you how ancient, we're talking Jurassic. And so this is a very pivotal item for the deep state to try to get a hold of. It was actually a major part of the Hittite Empire that used to move things underground during that time as well. So, yeah, that's why people go, have they gotten all the domes cleared? I didn't realize how vast the system was. So, no. And so now, the Russia and Turkey and other parts there, the alliance is playing off one neocon against another. They're playing Netanyahu against Erdogan. Netanyahu wants to create Greater Israel, which is on their arm badge on the IDF of what that is. And that's just the first level of what it is. It's like any world conqueror. Netanyahu is a wannabe world conqueror, as is Erdogan. He wants to recreate the Ottoman Empire. So if the two overlap, they're going to get into a war with each other. And that's already, we can see the back and forth with the Kurds and the part where the Chevron operation is that takes control over all the oil and natural gas that's in Syria that was backed by the U.S. and controlled by U.S. military bases. And we've lost U.S. military there. In fact, in the UN, there was a person asking a U.S. person, what about the U.S. military personnel you've lost in Syria? We don't have any military in Syria. Well, then how'd you lose them there? So we have bases there, and we have bases all over Africa. And now we have deep state in Mount Hermon. And so they're trying to find something to not go down, to not fall. They're throwing everything at that they have, and they're running out of what they have. So this is finally bringing down the 6th of the 7 countries that in that document that was to bring down 7 countries in 5 years. The only one now left is Iran. And so that's where we are with Mount Hermon and why it's so pivotal to the deep state. Thank you. Back to you, Dr. Sala.
Yes, I agree with your analysis there, and a few other geopolitical analysts are saying the same thing, that Turkey and Israel are now basically going to get into a conflict over who controls Damascus, who controls Syria, but I want to just kind of raise this idea that the deep state has been trying to kickstart a Gog and Magog end times war, and that part of that is biblical prophecy. Part of the justification for that is using different biblical passages to justify the expansion of the war there. And one of the passages that is often cited is the book of Isaiah that talks about the end times when Damascus will be destroyed. And Damascus is probably, I think it is one of the world's oldest, if not the oldest city. And so far, it's kind of like escaped this civil war. But right now, with the Israelis and the Turks and the Islamic Jihad and the Americans in the picture as well, it looks like Damascus may actually be the epicenter of a new war. And could that be the kind of like attempt to start a Gog and Magog war, or are we past that danger point?
I think the deep state, depending on your timeline, they will create it on the Armageddon line, which is nearby. So that's a choice whether a person wants to go to experience that of a World War III. We know that just after the Civil War, Albert Pike wrote the various battles and wars: World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korea, Cambodia, Iraq, Desert Storm, all of this, to get us into this Gog Magog World War III final battle that comes out of the Middle East that pits the Muslims against the Christians and the Jewish people. In other words, the cross and the crescent moon and all of these different symbols against each other. And so that is ancient prophecy from quite a few different places, not just the Quran, the Bible, the Torah, many other. Even if you go into Hindu, you have Ragnarok. Even in Norse mythology, you have all of these different things that talk about an end war. And so it's because it's been envisioned for so long, it will take place. A new envisioning is that we don't have to do that. With the human species getting its freedom now, with Trump and the alliance, or the federation, however you want to call it, that no longer is envisioned as an absolute necessity. So in that new envisioning of the end times being much different, there will be an event, but it will not be a war. It will be a coronal mass emission in which that actually happens as a regular event in the Milky Way galaxy. And we are in that time frame of when that event happens. Every half rotation around the Milky Way is what was the Mayans called the Great Year, or the precession of our solar system around the center of the entire Milky Way. And there's a field that comes out called the photon belt. The deep state calls it the Masonic ring, that causes a massive disturbance within a solar system when it passes through that. And the reason for the global climate change has nothing to do with humanity. It has to do with the fact of our presence of our solar system already entering the outer edges of the photon belt. It's not like it's 3 days, bam, it's just here and there, and it's 3 days wide. It tapers off like any energy field, electromagnetic field. It diffuses outwards. We're already in that, so that's why, as I stated earlier, Trump's looking at buying Greenland so we can go, because the ice packs are breaking up earlier, and the Earth is getting warmer. Hopefully it's getting warmer because we're coming out of an ice age. So, where carbon dioxide got to the point plants almost couldn't breathe anymore. So it's a good thing we had the Industrial Revolution and got up the carbon dioxide levels and hydrocarbons in the air so plants could incorporate that in their growth patterns. That means then life can come back. You don't get a vast, one area of Earth warming. It's spread out evenly overall. So if you go back to the Jurassic period of Mount Hermon, and that dome when it was created, you're talking about a planet that was tropical from pole to pole. As you can see in Antarctica, coal and fossils with ferns and tropical plants in them. Same thing in Greenland. They're just not telling you. Why is Greenland so important? Same reason Antarctica is so important. That part of Antarctica used to be Atlantis. Part of Greenland used to be Atlantis as well. And where was the hub of all that connected to? Mount Hermon.
Okay, that's very important right there. So Mount Hermon was a kind of like nexus for the spread of this advanced technology, and the Book of Enoch actually kind of like corroborates that, because when the fallen angels commissioned or asked Enoch to represent them, I mean, they were accused of spreading all this advanced technology to humanity, and we weren't ready at that point for that. So it does suggest that they had a kind of nexus from which they kind of spread all this advanced tech. So that is very interesting.
Yes, and you mentioned the Book of Enoch, and of course that's not in the canonized book of the Bible. We have basically, depending on what Bible you're looking at, whether you're looking at the Roman Catholic, 66 books, I believe it is, and then there's several others included in several other of the various types of Christianity that are out there. And then as you go outwards, you get many, many, many more books from the various, during the canonization, the various meetings that the Roman Catholic Church had to decide which books belonged in the Bible and which ones did not. And now it's coming out that in the Vatican, they're actually now saying what I've been saying a long time ago, there is books underneath the Vatican. They found a library under there. So those books go into the fact, books that go way back, like the Old Testament, before the time of Christ, that go into the time frame when there was going to be no Armageddon. They talk about the Golden Age, or as they say, the end of the Kali Yuga and the beginning of the Golden Age, going back to the ancient Sanskrit writings, the various books of the Hindus and other groups talk about there. All of this goes back to many, many interconnected sacred documents through many, many different genres. So if we look at that in the canonized Bible, that's why they don't want it out. Same reason they don't want the Book of Enoch out, because it's talking about the importance of Mount Hermon. It's also talking about the non-terrestrial contact in quite a lot of detail.
Well, yeah, you mentioned Göbekli Tepe, and we kind of discussed the Mount Hermon underground base. Are there any other domes at the moment that you think are very significant in terms of conflicts happening around the world? I mean, I guess Ukraine, is there anything there that maybe is significant at this point?
There are several very significant. Crimea is massive. There are 64 pyramids in Crimea, and there is a thorium reactor system in those pyramids, and a thorium I don't know how to say it, extrapolation device in Crimea for high-end, from Hyperborean civilization for high-end technologies. Then that is attached directly to Mount Kalesh and Bucheg at the Giza Plateau.
Just to, if you can just elaborate on a thorium nuclear reactor versus a plutonium nuclear reactor, because as I understand it, that thorium is much safer than plutonium nuclear reactors.
Yes, thorium reactors are fusion, and it's by an isotope of thorium that is a far safer form, and they say potential alternative. It's not potential. It's David Adair, I believe, is actually developing thorium reactors on an island in, I think it's either Malaysia or Indonesia. They have an entire island where he's got quite a few of them he's developing and getting ready to be put out. And it goes back to this Hyperborean technology that has been out there we had a long time ago, and they buried all of this. The Book of Enoch goes actually into thorium reactors, if you're reading carefully. Of course, you have different language, because the knowledge at that time was, the language did not have the definitive terms to be able to explain it at that time. So the fusion of thorium is a far safer nuclear reaction than uranium, being it's easier controlled, and the degradation of the thorium does not get the violet poisonous waste that you get from plutonium and uranium.
Excuse me. As I recall, and maybe you can clarify this, pardon me, that the Atomic Energy Commission, they deliberately kind of like suppressed the development of thorium reactors in the United States, and instead kind of like fast-tracked plutonium fission reactors, thereby preventing the development of this kind of like safer nuclear energy that, as you said, is kind of like in a way a fusion reactor. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And thorium actually lends itself to heading into what they call low energy nuclear reactions, or cold fusion. It's not cold, but it's low energy, so you don't create the massive heat using thorium-232, which is still fertile for fusion, but it is a much safer driver than uranium or plutonium. It triggers and maintains a much safer field of energy, and it's quickly shut down, easier than like what happened with Chernobyl, where they tried to bring it up cold in a cascade event that got out of control. Thorium, you can bring it up cold in a cascade event, high energy, quick cascade event, and not get out of control, as did the situation with Chernobyl.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that some of these ancient dams, going back to the Hyperborean times and Bridge Edge Mountains, you mentioned that, and probably even Mount Hermon, that they may have thorium reactors in there.
Absolutely correct.
Okay.
My information is that we actually have this in the Ukraine decodes that one of the Europe coordinators did in Crimea. They do have thorium systems there.
Fascinating. Now, I think you have talked about space arcs. I mean, have you talked about these being hidden all over the planet or buried under there? I mean, what do you know? I mean, as you probably are aware that I have some insiders or whistleblowers, experiences have talked about space arcs, but do you have your own sources that talk about space arcs, or have you remote viewed these and come up with your own information?
Yes, a lot of, that is the only other than what's out there is remote viewing. I know the one that's just northeast of Crimea. There's a space arc in actually a nature reserve, and I'm sure JP has told you about that one. Mm-hmm. Everything I listened to that he put out there is completely accurate. There are several of them. One happens to be, strangely enough, near the Giza Plateau. Another one inside Mount Kalesh. Another one inside Bucheg. In the viewing room as part of that. It's inside the ship. The viewing room that Cinemark was talking about going in there. So these technologies, these ships are powered by, from my understanding, low-energy nuclear thorium devices.
Fascinating. Well, Gene, I mean, we were going to be discussing your new or your more recent paper on the DUMS, but I mean, it was so fascinating talking to you about these other topics that we've kind of run out of time. But I think we'll have to have you back if that's okay to actually finally talk about that other paper. I mean, but yeah. In the meantime, is there anything you want to say about what's coming? I mean, in another couple of weeks, Trump will be inaugurated. What do you think? Is this? Are we entering into an accelerated stage of disclosure, or will it be a very gradual rollout?
Yeah, accelerated beyond belief, and that's why people need to have some patience and not get freaked out about drones. A week and wait for the information to come out. A week is not very long. You've had patients for years. How about a week or two before you freak out? Don't freak out. Same thing with what happened in Romania. And now it comes out, the TikTok, as they say, debacle. Because they lost the election, the first round, they said he, was, again, what's wrong with running your election and all that on TikTok? You can run it through social media, mainstream media. But if you go over to TikTok, because it's a Chinese company, now it's Russian disinformation? I'm confused. Isn't that Chinese? So be patient, because now it comes out that the ruling party, the head party in Romania, is the one who did the election. Let's say this here, right? Is the one that's doing the election fraud. So now they're saying we're not going to let the election, and they were trying to do this with Georgia Green Party in Georgia too. Again, you're watching the deep state falling under the waves, as Atlantis did. It's sinking, it's falling apart, it's coming apart. Have patience. Don't freak out if a UAP or a drone or whatever you want to call it. I'll stay with UFO, thank you. Non-terrestrial orbital device or space device. Tons of names you can come up with. Just be patient and don't freak out, react. Patience, it's like in any war. In martial arts, I learned, the minute you start reacting, you've lost the battle. And this is what they've got the deep state doing. They are reacting. They've lost the battle. You have to respond. That means to ponder and then do what you just pondered. Respond. Think about what you're going to do, how you're going to think about something, and then do it. That's responding. So in this, respond and don't react. Have patience and be calm and be relaxed. When all else fails, breathe. Eat deep circular breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth. Calm, focus on the beauty of, like behind Dr. Salwa out there in Keyport, just beautiful, or Key West, wherever he is, somewhere in Florida. Key West, yeah. Somewhere in Florida. Let's try to be subtle. But anyways, Key West. And for me, look at the Rocky Mountains, look at the trees, look at the snow, look at the beauty of God's creation, and know everything will turn out well. Yeah, the Alliance has it. No need to freak out. That just feeds the loosh, which is what they need to win. If we don't give them that, they can't win. The upper levels, fourth and fifth density, they require that loosh, and it's dropping drastically. That's why the constant wars. It creates a lot. Death and dying creates a lot of loosh. When the soul leaves the body, there's an energy that is measured. It's measurable. The Chinese have done that. They have had people that are near death, say that they will put themselves through this experiment, and they have the person on a table that measures their weight to fractions of a gram, and they have the room is completely sealed, so they are measuring the humidity and every kind of wave of energy they know precisely. And at death, when the soul leaves the body loses anywhere between a half an ounce up to 12, 14 ounces sometimes, immediately at death. So there's an energy that we are all made of, part of both. Like at birth, or not at birth, but at the moment of inception, if you look at the zygote, the egg, when the sperm penetrates, there's a flash of light. And that's the light of the Holy Spirit coming in. So we're part of the light of the Holy Spirit, and in that, just focus in that light and know that the Prime Creator or God or whatever you want to call it is a God of beauty. Look at what's behind Dr. Sala and his calmness in all of this, and feel that same calmness. And look at the animals and the birds and all of this beauty and creation, and just remain calm and know it's all going to come out fine. There's going to be, because we let this go too far, a loss of life for some people in some areas and some things. That is war. It's that, like what happened in Syria. It's that and a lot of loss of life, or World War III and loss of all life. You have to, in a war, do the lesser. What is the least, where the good prevails. And in all this, that is where we are now. And we will prevail and come through this. It means that you'll get to see your grandchildren grow up. Otherwise, you wouldn't. So that's where we are. No, the Prime Creator, God, has this, and everything will be fine. And I will be seeing you, apparently, again with Dr. Sala. Thank you very much. God bless and Godspeed.
Right. And for those that want to follow up and learn more about Gene, he has a website, GeneDecode.org. So Gene, do you have any upcoming events or things that are happening through your website that you want to let people know about?
Absolutely. So this is the website. The free area is surface area, because like a submarine, when you're on the surface, you're easily seen for free. When you dive, you're going to deep dives, and that's $7 a month or $77 a year. Try to make it. I know things are tough right now, so because of all the inflation, and so I've tried to make it affordable. And we have as soon as the holiday season's done, we have an amazing decode coming up on the truth about 911. One of the best decodes I've ever seen the team do. The Blessed for Service team. It's being done, and it's in the process. It's nearly ready to go. We're waiting for the holiday season to let people have time to be with their families. I also have a Q&A. I do one a month at the end of the month, this Friday, for 2 to 3 hours. So that's available for anybody that wants to come in and ask basic questions like when or health protocols. I can't do those. I'm not a licensed doctor, so I can't give you prescriptions or anything like that. I can say what I do, but that's about it. Then I have to be careful. But so the website, we have quite a few, usually 2 live stream events a week. And then usually one of those is a decode. So I will be doing part 2 of what we had part 1 of in January, most likely, towards the end of January. Dr. Sala showed you part of, I did it with him, a part of my part 1 deep intro, and all my other decodes are on there. I also have one on the Alpha Draco. I'm working on 2 of them right now, one on the ants, both the negative and the positive, and then one on that also I might combine in that with the mantids, both being insect, and then I also am working on one with the dorsi and the matri. So those are non-terrestrial groups of the negative alien agenda, determining which are the negatives and which are the positives, because within any species, human or any others, you got good and you got bad. And so the same thing goes for non-terrestrials. There are ones that are almost all good, but maybe one or two are not. There are species that have ascended to fourth, fifth density and beyond, and one or two didn't go that way. They went to the negative direction. They descended. So in that, I try to put out information that I get through remote viewing, through other means of research and other abilities I was given by God, just to put it that way. And so I can't really go, I was going to, but I was told no. Just now, I get kithed information sometimes from